Joy to the world!
Pineaaronapple here with the last episode of Doctor Who for 2024, the Christmas special, Joy to the World. And boy, coming straight after Empire of Death, do I hope it's a good one. The last season was one of ups and downs, with Stephen Moffat being the shining outlier. So having him do the special was definitely the right choice, even if there were strange choices that I found in this story. Joining us as our Christmas companion, much in the same vein of Catherine Tate, The Waif, and even more so Kylie Minogue, who's already gotten a reference this season, we have Joy, played by Nicola Coughlan, who has been pretty well known recently in Bridgerton, but is also well known from Derry Girls and talking about her breasts on the internet. So with the preamble out of the way, let's get into the episode. We start in a 1940s era hotel mid-Blitz, told with titles far less distracting than either Chibnall's or the ones we saw in the 60th. As an older couple try to enjoy their mid-Christmas war, or is it a mid-war Christmas? And there are many small roles like these two, most pretty memorable, as even for such small roles, they're played quite earnestly. Their quiet evening is interrupted by 15 barging in from a door that was supposedly always locked and offering a ham and cheese toastie with a pumpkin latte, only finding confusion. And I may just be experiencing PTSD from Fine Time, but maybe a little bit of racism.
Just a little bit.
That's mostly a jest, as they don't even bring the Doctor up, just the confusion of the unknown door being opened at all. But others found it strange how they reacted. Like the woman hiding behind the man when the Doctor approaches, but they are mid-Blitz, so I don't really think it's like that. But it's strange that I've seen it brought up more than once.
Which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice, right?
15 pulls the same trick with a woman on a train who looks longingly at a letter. Then some Everest climbers, and finally in 2024, where Joy gets a room at the Sandringham Hotel. The hotel manager Anita shows her around, Joy being a little over the top in copium, but pretty genuine. Like she's putting up a happy front. I wonder if that'll play into her character at all. She introduces herself to a fly, which I suppose is supposed to be charming and expository at the same time, but I just find it fucking weird. And the credits roll as she's interrupted by both 15 and a Silurian. And you know what, I didn't think about it until recording this, but it is a nice touch having a Silurian in here to reintroduce the audiences to their people, when I believe that they're going to be featured in the next spin-off, The War Between the Land and the Sea. We start the story proper in London, 4202, at the Time Hotel, being pretty much what you'd expect from the name, with pretty good looking sets. 15 lands in his snazzy dressing gown to get some milk, totally not noticing the suspicious guy with the handcuffed briefcase. 15 is intercepted by a member of the staff that is actually quite charming, Joel Fry as Trev. 15 getting some good jokes off.
Got a Navcom algorithm that homes in on fresh milk. I mean, I could just get a fridge.
And depressingly realising his habit of getting mugs for two is acting up, as he is now companionless, heading into the TARDIS and gearing up unconsciously, realising how suspicious the guy with the briefcase was. He's intercepted by Trev again, and plays head office inspector pretty well, Trev following along charmingly, as 15 pretty quickly figures out how the hotel works. After a name drop that totally wasn't influenced by Everything Everywhere All at Once, 15 orders the food he was carrying before, showing off a clever but not used aspect of the hotel, the kitchen being 30 minutes out of sync, something that all restaurants need.
They start preparing your food before you order it. It saves time.
Yeah, it's still microwave though.
But you can't expect miracles.
15 sends Trev to watch the guy with the briefcase as he does his round trip with the food, claiming it's undercover work. And we get a demonstration of the antagonist as the man with the briefcase enters the bar, him saying its catchphrase and the case transferring itself to the barkeep, attempting to climb the chain of command, taking over the host's mind, which somehow makes them blink differently. The case sets its ex-hosts on a death timer, and it lures Trev inside, transferring to him, killing both the barkeep and the previous guy in a nice effect, not unlike the Ravager's abilities from Flux. One thing this episode gets mostly right is killing off its characters. Sure, it does the whole Stephen Moffat kill them without killing them trope at the end of the story, but each one, for a character given, I don't know, 1 to 3 minutes of screen time probably, works quite well. Trev failing to tell the Doctor about the briefcase switching hands, as it dispatches him after using him to seek out the manager, who has access to all the time portals, a Silurian played by Jonathan Aris. 15 can't talk to Trev because, you know.
Oh dear. I wouldn't let him down.
So heads into Joy's room, introducing himself, the situation becoming a mess as Anita comes back in, attempting to distance herself from the situation. The case tries to ensnare the Doctor, but as Joy repeatedly tries to get some answers, ends up with the briefcase. Joy being at least, for the most part, understandably cross, as horny Stephen comes out for a bit.
Are you two having a sort of game? I know all about these hotels.
The starseed will bloom and the flesh will
Don't be
rise.
filthy.
Is that saying only there for that joke? Because, unlike the mention of the starseed, I don't recall flesh being very important in the villain's plot. 15 deduces that the Silurian will die, Joy now fully under the case's influence, taking his pass and getting ready to voyage back. 15 tries to pep talk the Silurian into survival, as the case has for some reason now stopped its search of power, and we get another sad death. Shooty crying once again. Which, you know, would have been understandable if either he hadn't cried almost every episode last season, or if this manager was another Vastra situation. 15 running into his old friend, but finds him acting strangely, noticing the case after missing him at the front desk earlier. And much like how Trev died sad that he couldn't help the Doctor, the manager could have done the same. As in the past, the Doctor helped him out with a mysterious plot that can be adapted by Big Finish 10 years down the line. Either option could have enhanced the scene, but as it is, it's just fine. But it should be better.
But it can be better.
Joy wants to leave, and with some funny yet utterly dated wordplay, 15 snaps her out of her mind control by opening the case revealing the starseed, and refusing to close the case until a second before Joy's incoming death, which lights a fire under her ass. Unfortunately, he has to put in a code to not kill her, which is only solved as he invites a latter version of himself into the room to give himself the code, using smart technobabble to wave away why this should be more dangerous than it is. Joy goes with the older Doctor, leaving the younger one alone, quite angry at himself, which is making me think good about Shooty. This scene where he insults himself is actually quite effective after Ruby's departure, and there were similar great scenes in Series 14 when he was angry, but I just find it strange how well he pulls off the Doctor's fury and self-doubt, something I felt Jodie never fully mastered. But 15 also seems to have failed so hard when it comes to sadness, always heading for the extreme. This gives us the best and worst of the episode, an extended, almost 10-minute sequence where 15 spends a year on Earth, waiting for the next confirmed entrance to the Time Hotel to appear to complete the loop. And we get a lot of great stuff, Anita becoming his BFF, but also she may want to bang him, but she's great, even if it takes her a little while to warm up properly. In fact, I think I like her better than Joy, and considering how this RTD era's companions seem to be a bit copy and paste from his first go-around, I hope Anita becomes the companion for Shooty's third season. Considering we have Ruby and Rose, blonde, young, mother subplots named after a shade of red, involved with at least 2 seasons, and next season's companion, Belinda, who all we know about her is that she is non-white and works in a hospital, much like RTD's other second companion. So if the next companion is a Donna ripoff, she should have appeared in this special, and considering what happened to Joy, I do hope it's Anita. 15 spends his time in the room he now rents, or working at the hotel, giving us a lot of funny shenanigans. Some depression as he refuses to contact Ruby, assuming she's better off without him, and before they know it, him and Anita set up a routine, making it even sadder when next Christmas comes along, and he has to leave to catch the time window.
I have a slightly complicated life.
Oh God, you're married, aren't you?
No.
They have a really sad goodbye, and eventually 15 finds the door and makes his way back to replay the case scene, taking Joy back to the hotel and leaving himself with Anita. So that was all great stuff, but Jesus, does it mess with the pacing of the episode. Seriously, that was so good, and now we have to go back to this less interesting plot? At this point, I just wish the whole adventure was Anita and 15 in the hotel. Then hey, maybe put Joy in there too. But the whole Time Hotel thing could have been its own story, and the fact that I was longing for a different episode for the next half hour is a strange unintended side effect that hinders my enjoyment of the rest of the story, even with the other great stuff here. Also, while 15's speech to Anita is good, it is a little redundant. Sure, you can see it as 15 wondering what living in the right order is like, but it feels a little cheap considering that was 14's whole arc. Joy, much like my dad, complains about how lazy the bootstrap is, but but the case takes control again, leading her up the floors to an earlier point. And this may be the darkest 15 has gotten, and he plays it well. When his warnings don't get through to Joy, worried about how dangerous hatching the star could be for her, somehow just pulling it out of his ass that the ones behind the seat are a company, he tries to free her another way. This way involves getting under her skin, using her insecurities against her, and just kind of insulting her. And it's played excellently by the both of them, as Joy tries to retreat into the programming, and 15 is at his cruelest. But it's only once he brings up her mother she starts lashing out, having died in lockdown while she wasn't allowed to see her, affecting her so much that she starts assaulting him in the room, letting out the rage at the politicians that we all know felt free to impose rules on the people, and then got together themselves for parties, violating their own guidelines. 2.
Get on the beers.
I'm not a particular fan of Nicola Coughlan, but the sadness and anger of Joy is played pretty well here, as the Doctor consoles her for a moment, but the case was separated in their scuffle, and the Doctor's wild assertions are proven right as the case is revealed to be villain guard tech. The case brings up an avatar telling them the star is to be sold, needing to be matured, hence placing it so far in the past to be picked up out in another time door. This is able to happen as their time location is revealed with a T-Rex's chomping jaws. The CGI looking pretty decent, but I do feel the T-Rex should have been more of a threat. It getting one good chomp in and then just letting them get away. Sure, it might be being controlled by the case, so the plan is for them to collect it later, but that's not very well demonstrated. 15 figures that the location of the case would have been sent to Joy, but due to the forced separation, that won't happen. Instead, a copy of Trev emerges from the Sonic in a cute scene.
Doctor, your thing is buzzing.
Listen, all of me is pretty stressed.
15 is confused as Trev reveals all the recent dead personalities have been duplicated into the star and tells 15 the location of the case. 15 and Joy head to the pretty cool looking room where an altar has been built around the case, needing a large force to open as it shows it's still connected to Joy. This starts a pretty solid action sequence, even if all the CGI isn't perfect, where 15 goes through a couple of the times set up before and using a rope and hook plus a moving train to rip the altar apart. The case opens and Joy gives it a pep talk as 15 makes his way back, but not before wasting some of the 4 minutes before the end of the Earth, having a very meh scene with this woman. 15 finds the case empty and exits the tomb up a flight of stairs that look cool but make no sense, as that means any old fool could have just walked down the flight of stairs and found the starseed, which kind of defeats the whole purpose of having it locked up. 15 finds Joy needing a bit of Gaviscon as she takes the starseed into herself, happy to be with everyone else including Trev, and much like Astrid and Bill's puddle girlfriend, wishes to use her powers to be among the stars, saving humanity from the starseed's power. I do wonder though how she came to have the powers. Did she absorb it or did she shove it down her throat? Because that is a hilarious visual. 15 is more than a little perturbed, but with the power of the starseed they've rooted out Villengard's influence, and Joy swears to protect those within her and others, offering the Doctor some advice that he gave her earlier, which, while a little overdone as a theme in the show, and I feel it would mean more if the two of them had more of a bond, it is serviceably emotive. She floats into the air, joyful, and takes herself into the stars, becoming a ball of light, a bright star in the sky. And once again, doing well to tie in the minor characters, her star's shine is seen throughout time, giving hope to those who've lost it. The two in the middle of the Blitz, the woman on the train, the men in the mountains, Ruby Sunday, who receives a call from one of her mums, Anita, who fondly remembers 15's time with her, even being visited by one of the women from the Time Hotel, offering her a job at 15's recommendation. And the weirdest one by far, Joy's mother dies, laying her eyes upon Joy in the sky. And Joy, who swore to see her properly, absorbs her into the star, which, yes, them reuniting is a beautiful moment, but there are a lot of troubles here if you think about it too hard, which, unfortunately, I couldn't resist. First of all, tabling the implications, when Joy hangs up the call, the logo of Royal Hope Hospital appears in the middle of this emotional scene, meaning I spent most of the scene, my first go around, attempting to recall where I know the name from and realising that it's where Martha worked, distracting me from being emotionally invested. And then when rewatching, I thought upon the logistics. We see Joy's light absorb her mother, and with the others, as we saw, this disintegrates their bodies. And it it seemingly does the same to her mother, but I suppose there's enough leeway for reasonable doubt that perhaps just her consciousness was absorbed, but if not, that means her body evaporated. So Joy would either be told her mother was missing, not dead, because if they confirmed her death, how would they bury her body? I think Joy would have brought up, they told me she was dead, but they also didn't have a body. Would Unit become involved, like Torchwood did in their sex gas episode, which did a similar thing to its victims? Also, speaking of bootstraps earlier, does this mean Joy becomes the Starseed and goes on this adventure because she murdered her own mother? Or, due to the stabs at the government during the pandemic, does this script endorse mercy killings? That was a bit of a miscalculation. And just to make this conversation all the funnier, and yes, I burst out laughing at this reveal, Joy is the star of Bethlehem that led the three wise men to Jesus' birthplace. Does this mean the Bible is canon in Doctor Who? This episode is bringing up far too many questions. Is God real in the Whoniverse? As some, extra-dimensional being? Or is it more of a Code Geass situation? Was the Flood an alien attack to terraform the world? Was King Herod a time traveler that sought to stop Christianity like Krasko in Rosa? Massacre of the Innocents would be a great Big Finish audio title. Was Judas an alien? Was the snake in the garden the Black Guardian? Yeah, okay, that's enough of that. Also, if Big Finish try and make any of those stories, they're gonna have to pay me a lot of money. So that was Joy to the World. Yeah, we ended the episode on a very strange note. So putting away that, let's start with the critiques. The episode was disjointed in story and pacing, making me yearn for more Anita and feel that Joy should have had a better or deeper dynamic to the Doctor. Joy was mostly good, but the way they ended her story would have gone over better if the Doctor and her had just a smidge more of a connection, because as it is, the story makes clear connections, like both being defined by a room they inhabit, are good, but he assumes a lot in this episode, landing smack bang on the Starseed being of villain guard-like origin, and figuring out exactly how to push Joy's buttons. Not by observing her over time, but living in the same room that she had only rented for a week. Shuji cries again, and while the scene is decent, it once again feels unearned. But to be fair, he does get a few great scenes in this episode, being good overall, but still falling into some of the same faults from the last season. And while the story does well to show us its minor characters ahead of time, attempting to tie them into the story well, it was hit and miss. The old codgers have some nice lines, but don't actually do much. The woman on the train was acted well, but her little side story and point of character confused me a little. The men on the mountain don't do much in character or action, and while I liked the manager and especially Trev, they died in the first half of the episode. In one's case, pretty soon after the Doctor lays eyes on him, not being as emotionally impactful as it could have been. So with this many ups and downs, I'll say I liked the episode a fair amount, but there were far too many missteps and unintentional moments that took me out to give it a shining recommendation. So, I'll compromise between my feelings of enjoyment and depression and my critical view, and give the 2024 Christmas special Joy to the World by Stephen Moffat a 6.5 out of 10, as I said, taking objective and subjective points together, but just out of my enjoyment, it would probably be a solid 7. But compared to all the other episodes, I feel like that might be a little unfair. To cut out my objective critical views.
Joy to the world!
While not amazing, it's definitely positive. And like I said before, starts off Series 15 far better than what happened last season.
Space babies!
So without further ado, let's get into the yays and, of the robot revolution. We start off with a younger Belinda and her mid-boyfriend, him getting her one of those name a star cards and naming a light, which is strangely bright in the night sky. I think he mixed up Miss Belinda Chandra with Sirius. This is actually a Chekhov's gun being loaded in more ways than one, and I like the subtlety here of the comments Alan makes and how that develops in the story down the road. It's nice to see Russell do some forethought that isn't ruined by the god of death being killed by bungee cord and naming a baby by pointing at a road sign on a lamppost. This lamppost almost giving me PTSD. 17 years later, the Doctor arrives at Belinda's hospital in a not so well done shot for some reason. And I might have missed something, but how does he know Belinda's going to be kidnapped? Looking at the episode a second time, 15 later mentions someone told him about Belinda, which I guess we'll see in a later episode, but I did miss that on the first go-around. We're introduced to Belinda's work as a nurse, and making her the Doctor's second nurse companion after Rory. Although, I think Molly was a nurse, does that make 3? And Belinda is already easily personable, a little sarcastic. She feels more active than Ruby in a couple of ways though. And after finishing this episode and having the Mundy Flynn connection flyby, I think the main problem comparing Belinda to Ruby is that Belinda seems separate to the things happening around her, whereas from her introduction, Ruby is far more integral to the overall plot. So when the overarching narrative doesn't work or feels shoved in, it means, bar 73 yards, Ruby can feel a lot flatter than Belinda seems in this episode, even if Belinda makes some choices the script can't really back up. 15 tries getting Belinda's address from, is that the pram lady? And debuts what I think is a new Sonic colour, loving the banana yellow. Also in design is the Doctor's outfit. He rocks the Belinda Chandrian garb well later, but I'm not sure I like his initial outfit. I like the colours, but the short coat over the shirt, vest and skirt, I don't know. Belinda's home is slightly humorous and relatable, but is ruined as the robots come trundling in, taking the plaque and kidnapping Belinda. The robots are a bit chunky, but I liked their design, and the physical comedy mixed with the deadliness reminds me a lot of the emoji bots and the robots from the Empty Planet in the Sarah Jane Adventures. But I love the mix of what seems like mostly practical effects with some digital touch-ups. After some cat murder, which makes me hate these robots infinitely more than anything else in the story by the way, Belinda is taken away. Mrs. Flood, her neighbour oddly enough, seeing her off and running away before the Doctor can see her.
You won't see me.
Also, while I like the toy-like design of the ship, sort of 50s chic, where are the scorch marks from the flames of the takeoff and landing? I'm sorry, but that's a 0 out of 10. I'm never watching Doctor Who again.
Toast. A little piece of
15 chases after Belinda, and once she tells the robots they should be going after Alan instead, time goes wibbly. The same thing happening for the Doctor. It's a nice effect, but maybe a little overcooked. It's fine as it is, but might have been better shortened if only by a couple of seconds. Landing on Miss Belinda Chandra World, the robots try to install her as Queen, and it's pretty apparent thanks to Sasha55, played by Evelyn Miller, the robots are in deadly control here. There's a cute little polishing robot I knew was going to be instrumental in the end, and he doesn't disappoint. And we see 15 has already installed himself as the historian of the people, communicating to Belinda cleverly that a while ago the robots glitched and can't understand every 9th spoken word. And while a little out of left field, this is used to great effect throughout the story, both here and later, pacing and script-wise, but it's also shot really well.
Careful.
The robots reveal she is to marry the great AI generator, giving Tiger Rock vibes. So I thought that this would be a commentary on ChatGPT or Grok, something like that. And leaks indicated the same, but its name is just to set up a clever pun later, so it was a little odd. But since I don't think the script would have done commentary on this topic very well, it's probably better the way it is. Belinda is told the AI generator wants to bond with Belinda, almost Cyberman style, but more Superman 3. But the Doctor gives the word for all of the humans to strike, the resistance rising with some pretty good action. The Doctor and Sasha trying to ferry Belinda out. Sasha, having been the Doctor's companion for the past 6 months, dying in front of him, causing another shooty cry. But I felt this one was justified. Taking the polish spot with them, and Muscle Man over here that the story pretends is important, but I'm sure doesn't get named in the episode, but is called Manny in the credits, played by Max Parker. Manny is really quick to blame Belinda. And while both her and the Doctor adamantly remove blame from her, Manny keeps reminding Belinda he hates her. And that will somehow change her mind enough to reactivate the polish spot and its tracking device to be recaptured. And while it does well to show Belinda won't let other people suffer for her, but overall the heel turn feels slapdash and lazy. Belinda gets a nice little scene acting like the nurse she is, helping people and reminding 15 of Monday. Meanwhile, 15 is worried as the diploma Belinda has is identical to the generator's one. one. The same item displaced in time, meaning boom should they touch. Belinda fixes a guy's arm, and thank God this species doesn't have a different muscle and bone structure, because instead of putting his arm back in place, she could have ripped it off. The other timey-wimey aspect is introduced as 15 hit a time fracture, no not that one, a barrier of sorts between this planet and Earth. 15 appearing 6 months beforehand, explaining his hair growth.
Hello, robots.
Manny is a fuckwit, so Belinda does her thing and gets herself captured, taken to the generator ready to accept her fate. The generator talks to Belinda, and after repeating something Alan had said, he reveals himself to be a robotized Alan, taken after Belinda said they should have taken him instead, and the time fracture meaning he arrived years earlier, creating the sort of bootstrap paradox, where she sent for him, and in turn he sent for her, and in turn she sent for him. His name actually Al Generator, and this is certainly a more clever twist as first believed, because people thought this was going to be Omega, although I'm not sure why, if AI is actually Al, the word generator was put on there, but I suppose you could just call him Al. Belinda is shocked, and we flash back to Alan's kidnapping, being taken by the robots and getting put at the top of the food chain. And in his incel and gross personality, he goes power mad, even has this Moriarty looking bloke killed when he questions the machinery that technically comes from their future. So Alan then subjugates the planet, and we get the reveal he was just a bitch the whole way through.
You've taken coercive control and made it complete control of the whole planet. Planet of the incels.
The ninth word concept comes back as Alan is warring with himself. It's really well thought out, even continuing as his next every ninth word would be Belinda, mine, and forever. Even if it doesn't work all the way through to the end, the polish bot comes in clutch, ferrying the current diploma to Belinda, allowing her to touch it to Alan's, causing major feedback that she only survives thanks to 15's interference. And while I'm not totally sure what's going on here, I was impressed and interested by the way they took the visuals, looking like John Pertwee's intro. Although I've no idea what comes after, the Doctor apparently having saw through Belinda's life, whatever that means when paired with this weird flashback. Alan is reduced to a sperm and an egg, and the planet is saved, no longer under Al's influence. And Muscle sees the duo off, claiming the Citadel will now be named Sasha 55 in her honour. 15 does a funny little dance, and they go through the whole bigger on the inside rigmarole. But while 15 wants to know how the diploma gets to where it needs to be in the future, Belinda calls him out on the madness, death and misery, and his unethical business practices. So he reluctantly agrees to just take her home with no adventures, after talking about the whole spatial genetic multiplicity thing with Mundy. But he is unable to do so as they just bounce off the correct date. Why he can't do what people have been saying about Angels Take Manhattan for years and just land the day before or the week before and hang out for a bit, I don't know. But now they have adventures to go on, the season arc hinted at as we see famous debris and a cab floating through space. So, I really enjoyed this episode, but critically it felt like there were one too many holes. And there were a few aspects like the time rift and the certificate that probably could have used more fleshing out, even if they are going to be brought back up later. But Belinda had a pretty good start. The human characters were mostly negligible, but I feel like the mix of comedic tone and drama fit really well. There were well thought out details like the ninth word rule that are followed more 98% of the time than 100, so a lot of clever things, but there were small details and moments that were just middling or in one case really frustrating. So I think I'll be starting this series off with a 6.5 out of 10, much like the previous Christmas special. I am leaning more towards a 6, but certainly not a 7. But looking at the reactions from people who actually like the show, not Bolstrek or Nerdrotic or that one creepy psychopath who makes thumbnails with entirely too much text, racism, and a violating sexualization of women, the general consensus seems to be a happy one. So I'm glad that a lot of people enjoyed it, and I'm excited for next week. Even if, with all the hints, I'm a little afraid that we might be going into Empire of Death territory this season. But I'm hoping in the end it will stick the landing, learning from last season's mistakes, even if it was filmed pretty much straight after.
Joy to the world!
We get a pretty effective cold open where a group of typical filmgoers enjoy a film on nuclear war. I guess this is what Oppenheimer's average audience looked like. And a Mr. Reginald Pye, played by Linus Roach, leaves his spoon unattended, which is never a good idea as a beam of menacing moonlight bounces off it and into the light of the film projector, possessing the main character of the running cartoon, Mr. Ring-a-Ding, played by Alan Cumming, a clever rubber-hose character with a fun theme song. The animation for Mr. Ring-a-Ding is really effective, both in 2 and 3D. Very Roger Rabbit-esque, pretty well done, as I didn't notice any major miscommunicating between live-action animation. Ring-a-Ding takes the audience's comments to heart, and now, with his newfound power, descends on them, leading into the opening. Once back with the Doctor and Belinda, he's still trying to get her back to the right time, and after dodging questions about Gallifrey, Belinda tells us a little about her parents, and 15 builds a Vindicator, a device to draw them into the right date. Unknown to them, there'll be some adventures along the way, but for now they need to deploy it as they land in Miami in the 50s. And while I think Belinda is pretty good this episode, it's apparent from this moment that either due to direction or writing, she feels a little disingenuous as she's quite psyched about the time travel and everything. But she should still be a little bit pissed about this whole thing. Or still a bit frustrated with this time traveler who can't control this machine. Her eagerness and drive, while understandable, especially with the emotional scenes she gets, still feels a little too quick. Their outfits are pretty good, even if the Doctor's salmon tie feels like an affront to fashion, and the outside set looks pretty cool. Interestingly lit and definitely feels like, a TV version of Miami. You notice here the Doctor makes some alluding comments about skin colour, and the true implications that would come with 2 non-white time travellers, not overly leaned on, but just enough to make it believable. Belinda brings up Rock Hudson, fitting in well to her medical background, and it's a nice reference to make considering I've never heard of the guy. Of course, never able to resist a mystery, 15 is enamoured with the chained theatre, and although Belinda tries to get them on their way, 15 knows how to get her on board, investigating inside a diner across the way, even if technically and racially they aren't supposed to be in there. Mad Lad Logan allows them to stay and meet with the mother of one of the missing cinemagoers. 15 missing people in Series 15 with the 15th Doctor. The mother is now hopeful of her son's return after seeing a police box arrive, so Belinda is guilted into helping.
I have toppled worlds. Sometimes I wait for people to topple the world.
Logan keeps his exposition up, it really could have been done better, and we learn Reginald is still up there playing movies in the night, so 15 and Belinda break in, and unable to be warned away by Reginald's desperate pleas, they run into Mr. Ring-a-Ding.
I'm Mr. Ring-a-Ding!
Yeah, I just said that, don't interrupt me. Their introductions are played pretty well, Mr. Ring-a-Ding starting really cute and endearing with his own personal soundtrack.
I'm beaming at ya!
But his annoyingly repetitive catchphrase pays off well. The words outside becoming Harbinger and the toy maker's laugh coming out of him. I would have preferred if we just kept Mr. Ring-a-Ding's laugh as adding in the toy maker's laugh here and the flashbacks later. It feels a little much like Russell's expected us to forget all about what happened last season. But it's still an effective payoff. So we learn that Mr. Ring-a-Ding has been brought to life by the god of light, Lux Imperator. But what exactly was the Harbinger? It wasn't the film The Harvest Bringer, and each time before this it was a person, Henry and Harriet Harbinger. So that doesn't make a lot of sense, but the dialogue, animation and acting works pretty well with the payoff. Thanks to Reginald, we see that Lux's caveat is that he's bound to the rules of the character, having to do Mr. Ring-a-Ding's dance when it plays. But once again, this is another thing that doesn't fit perfectly, as the Toymaker and Maestro are the gods of music and games, so their rules work with such. But the god of light being bound to the rules of film and character? Those rules are fun and work in the episode, but I feel like a god of entertainment, or 3, would make a little more sense than the god of light. Reg wants them to escape and exposits to them that the movies in the dark feed Lux, and that he's trapped Reg here, not out of fear, but by bringing his dead wife back to life through his powers. It's heartbreaking and a really good idea, sold perfectly by both the Doctor and Reg.
And don't tell me she's not really there. Because if that thing is real, then so is she.
15 once again exposits about the gods, a little too much considering he's beaten them basically every time, and Belinda finds the missing people trapped in film. Remember that for later. So Ring-a-Ding attacks and points the cinema projectors at 15 and Belinda, turning them animated, which is a really cool idea, and I love all the leaning into the gimmick they do, both visually and in the meta-narrative. Although one major problem I have with the meta-narrative is coming up. So them expositing their fears and regrets, like all the Time Lords being dead, gives them depth, narratively and literally, bringing them back to live action, and it's really cute. They first attempt to escape by going to the next frame, and next over and over, eventually ending up in a cliché, where a racist cop holds them up, paraded by the grieving mother. 15 sees through this as lazy continuity, and instead of going up and down, they break the fourth wall, shattering the TV screen and ending up in the living room of 3 stereotypes of Whovians. And this set and these 3 fans are really cute, and I love some of the interactions, but for me, I can detect the exact line where it stops working.
Not the one where I am standing on a landmine. That was brilliant.
Blink. What happens in Blink?
It's the story where you're not allowed to blink.
Beyond the fact that Heaven Sent exists, the Whovians then realise they aren't real, helping the Doctor by getting him back and awkwardly admitting they'll die when the Doctor and Belinda go back into reality. And it's just far too melodramatic and the score is overplayed massively. Although I like hearing the music and I like the basic ideas and themes here, but with the script and dramatic acting of these 3, even though I like them, and I get the whole playing with cliches they were going for, the cliche of the melodrama, the cliche of what your average Doctor Who fan looks like. But even though I liked it, it just felt off, feeling more like fan fiction. It worked better for me on a second watch, but there are multiple different ways the scene could have played out, and it's nice, but it just doesn't fit together. Mashing the trope of a Whovian, but also giving them such weight in the story. So endearing, but out of place, even if I vibe with these 3 immensely. 15 and Belinda mourn the loss of their fans, using them as a rallying cry to fight, and they burst the frame with pretty cool effects. 15 getting some nasty burns that he regenerates away, only for Lux to come out swinging, capturing 15 and sending moonlight through him to harness his regeneration energy into his ring-a-ding body to become 3D, in a pretty cool effect. Using hints from the Whovians, Belinda starts a fire by wrecking all of the tapes in a biblically accurate scene of where the rest of the Daleks' master plan went. Lux starts getting dimensions with some pretty cool effects, and Belinda deduces Reg has matches in a pretty cool way. Initially, he's unwilling to help, but a vision of his wife appears, giving him the matches and asking him to commit suicide, where he does in a heroic fashion. But was his wife a construct of Lux there, who's, I don't know, somehow gained sentience? Or was Reg hallucinating? No idea, but it's a nice scene. Reg blows the hell up as Lux gets uglier, blowing the studio apart and blowing a hole in the wall, filling Lux up with so much light that he disperses through the universe. And we get a strange reference to Tooth and Claw.
We're 60% water and we can still drown.
You're 70% water, you can still drown. Come on!
Seriously, both times he uses this analogy, it's about light. It's weird. All of the missing people appear and, no, this is where I call bullshit. The place their film was stored in blew the hell up. They should all be dead, permanently. Something in the script needed to change to justify this. I don't care how nice of a moment it was. Belinda and the Doctor bond over the happiness as they go. Mrs. Flood coming up to the reunited mother and son, claiming that the Doctor's adventures will soon end. When else, May the 24th. And finally, as the credits roll, the Whovians, who are totally hints towards either the threefold deity of malice, mischief, and misery, or the gods of Ragnarok, and I'm definitely not clowning, don't mind me. But they live, and now they're even more defined, with last names now, judging by the credits. Good for them. So that was Lux, and apart from some problems with logic and writing, I had a lot of fun. Great performances, a creative and well done gimmick, and it looked fantastic. The story fails to grab me in portions in the middle, and that whole Whovian scene could have used a redo, but with Mr. Ring-a-Ding, the dynamic duo, Reg, and the creativity here, I'll have to give Doctor Who Series 15, Episode 2, Lux, a solid 7.5 out of 10. Match close to the Devil's Cord, as it's the same kind of episode, but both have their own ups and downs in their gimmicks, but I found myself more enamoured with the character and animation this episode, as opposed to the music in that one.
Joy to the world!
15 and Belinda are still blocked from their destination, Belinda freaking out a little bit, and 15 calming her down, promising to get her home.
Don't make promises you can't keep.
and learning more about her parents. It's a nice interaction, ruined by another goofy let's get dressed moment, feeling out of place tonally, and them getting the exact uniform needed, while believable in the TARDIS, still feels a little contrived. We're right into the action as 15 and Belinda jump down to the planet with a platoon.
Platoon of Jadoon near that lagoon.
The contrivances appearing again as there are just enough helmets for them. And while I feel this can be explained away with Mrs. Flood's appearance later on, like she planned his appearance, it could have used a little more explicit confirmation. After some panicking, they land and get their Vindicator reading, and are almost executed, but spared thanks to the flick of the psychic paper. And the platoon leader, Shia Castalian, played by Keelan Dunn, self-explaining that their gaps in knowledge are tests. I really liked Shia in this episode. The performance is really good, selling the tough commando, but matched with her backstory and reluctance but impressive ability to kill, made her really interesting. And matched with the other characters who I liked but had an issue or two with, she comes out on top. The ship won't be down for another 5 hours due to the radiation that kept the planet lifeless for years, and the platoon investigate a mining base, using mercury to mine carbon. They enter to find almost every member of staff either shot or physically crippled, and with the mirrors smashed, and I feel the atmosphere is nailed pretty well throughout, the only tonal issue being Britney played at the start. From the start, Cassio doesn't like the Doctor.
It's not appropriate to call me babes.
Okay, hon.
Wow, Doctor, sexual harassment in the workplace? It's not right, and Cassio doesn't have to take it. Anyway, they discover one survivor, the deaf chef Alice Fenley, played by Rose Ayling Ellis. And while having great acting behind her and some good moments of dialogue, both her and Belinda suffer in the dialogue in moments. Belinda's refusal of having seen something and Alice's desperate pleas to go home, needlessly repetitive and occasionally in the wrong moments. Just some variance in the dialogue would have helped immensely, as it doesn't take you out of the story, but if these characters just explained themselves a little more, it would have worked far better. 15 and Belinda treat her with less suspicion than the troops, using interesting subtitle tech to communicate with her, which is an interesting way to get around every actor needing to learn sign language, and looks nice in practice. Alice claiming that nurses are required to be fluent by law, which is a nice sentiment, as deafness is a medical condition. And as 15 is a much more emotional doctor, it's nice to see him use sign language after 12 deleted it.
Well, no, actually, I can't. It's been deleted. For semaphore. Someone get me a selection of flags.
Alice explains everyone else went mad, forcing her to kill her friend, leaving her alone for weeks, and her dialogue doing well to make her sympathetic. She's reluctant to give more info, and 15, Cassio and Shia split off to see the titular well, which looks pretty good CGI-wise, even if the green screen behind 15 can get a bit animated. On the team we also have Mo Gillivan, played by Bethany Antonia. And while not having as much to do and mostly just being the nice one, she is endearing in her moments with Belinda and in the final cliffhanger. Adding to the series arc, both Belinda and 15 find that these humanoids have no idea what Earth or anything coming from there is. It does go on a fraction of a second too long, but it's nice foreshadowing.
Have you ever met any? Humans, I mean. I never heard of you.
Yeah, well, you haven't heard of much. Bloody hell. With some clever jump scaring, Belinda sees the entity behind Alice. This male trooper to her side seeing it too, setting them on edge as Belinda tries to treat Alice's wounds. With 15, we cleverly learn that Cassio is a dick and Shia is a great shot, discovering a fragmented video file of people scared, yelling and running from the well, a thing seemingly coming out of it and scaring them like that. Alice claims everyone seeing the thing behind her is how the madness started, and Manly Trooper here threatens Belinda's life for arguing with him, and sends a troop directly behind Alice, sending the trooper into the air and dying on impact with the ground. The Midnight theme playing bombastically, which I was a little annoyed by. The Midnight theme is another recurring motif, just like the last episode had Matt Smith era music, and the reuse is getting a little old. At least here there is a reason to. But the Midnight track has nice, quieter, creepy moments that should have been used more than the louder part. With some investigation and a great reveal, 15 learns the planet is in fact Midnight, which I figured out as soon as Shia mentioned extonic stars, this episode taking place after the star's death thousands of years ago, making the whole diamond mining fit pretty well. As RTD has done a few times, there is also a flashback to Midnight, and while not bad, definitely feels unnecessary, as it doesn't really add anything but putting David's face on the screen. Doctor Who fans from RTD's last era would already get the gist, and new fans from the Disney era could understand that this is an unknowable thing from the Doctor's past he's scared of. So apart from maybe enticing Disney watchers to go see the 10 out of 10 that is Midnight, it doesn't really need to be here, but is done with far more taste than Empire of Death. So, now revealed to be a sequel to Midnight, let's talk about The Thing with No Name, or the Midnight Entity. It follows similar rules as in Midnight, and as you can't just do the same thing again, this feels like a really good progression of it. In Midnight, it targeted people, learning about them and possessing them. And while not to that degree, it does manipulate psychologically, just doesn't go into full possession. And turned around, it was shown to have pretty powerful kinetic abilities there, but in this episode, it's its go-to attack, so there's a nice reversal there. While keeping the whole beat it with suicide plot, it also gives the creature a weakness. It can't see itself, and as a preventative measure, it will kill anyone who looks at the back of the person it's clinging to. Now this still fits with Midnight, as it was possessing someone not sitting behind them, and there weren't any mirrors to disprove this theory there, but no one dying kinetically in Midnight, and I'm sure people stood behind Sky in that. It seems that while seeing itself does it harm, the killing of anyone who stands behind it and sees it is voluntary. So all in all, while a little muddled, this is a pretty solid continuation of the creature, and while technically this episode gives the creature a physical appearance, it isn't set in stone, and the flashes we get are really effective, this possibly just being a representation of the creature and not its true form, which would have been going too far. Like seeing it crawl out of the well or something would just ruin it. 15 sells the seriousness well, and Cassio, the dick that he is, takes mutinous charge. Not killing Alice straight up, as that's a way the creature transfers. So fed up with not getting his way, Cassio causes a mutiny, which causes the creature to lob a good chunk of the squad at him, convincing me more this is for its own pleasure more than involuntary defense. And we get this banging line,
If it was a clock phase, you die at midnight.
And this stone cold moment from Shia.
Turn 180.
15 decides to full-on confront the creature as they all discuss abandoning Alice, and he cries again, and man, would this despair and then hopeful moment with a sort of eldritch twist would have been so much more effective, just like when David teared up in Midnight, if 15 hadn't cried every episode this season. Sure, the Doctor should cry occasionally, the tears selling the true despair of the moment, but using it all the time like spamming a button, as I've said before, cheapens the good moments majorly. The Doctor realizes how to beat the creature while it's fucking with him, even knowing his name, which I assume it got from mind-fucking him in Midnight. And in this episode specifically, like the end of Robot Revolution, I like the difference in Ncuti's laughs. His triumphant laugh as he figures the creature's weakness out here is far different from the dark chuckles he gives when remembering how the entity toyed with him before. So using Running Mercury as his theme plays, Shia shoots the pipe out, creating a really cool looking fountain of mercury, reflecting the creature back on itself, and they get the hell out of there. Us only getting the briefest glimpse of it, which I love. Two troopers take Alice out, with her wearing what is definitely a variant of the orange spacesuit. And I didn't notice initially, but there are actually two creatures, one escaping as the airlock senses 4 beings, not the 3 humanoids. A really clever setup to the pre-credits twist. The second creature attacks, attaching itself to Belinda and using the whole paranoia angle to good effect again. And after the whole oh no Belinda bit, Shia takes the creature by hitting Belinda fatally, but Mo having the chance to save her just in time, so we get a really nice moment with some monologue and flashbacks from Shia, as the Doctor watches her throw herself and the creature back down the well. It's great, and I think if the episode was longer, I would have liked to see not just more of the creature and interpersonal challenges, but Shia's backstory too. Belinda is cured and her and the Doctor get back in the TARDIS, worried about the whole disappearing Earth thing. And on the ship, Mo reports back to Mrs. Flood, and yeah, the whole who is this woman thing that's been done on series 4 and 6 and 7 and 8 and 14, and now here is getting a little old. But I like that Mrs. Flood is taking more of a Missy approach. Not just a random woman, but someone following the Doctor and clearly has an evil plan. The story ends proper as another member of the team seems to think she sees something behind Mo. Mo almost pissing herself. And while the score is a little too overbearing, I like this little ending scene. But it feels a little too much like the end of Sleep No More for my tastes. So, that was The Well. And with great monsters, characters, action and mystery, I loved it, especially the feeling of watching it with the lights out at 11 at night. And most of my issues, the score, repetitive dialogue, etc., feel a lot more nitpicky when compared to the great stuff. So while I was going to give the episode an 8.5, that's what I gave Boom, and I think this episode should sit just above Boom. I'll have to give Boom another watch to see if it should be an 8 instead, but I have only the littlest issue in calling this a 9. And it seems I'm not alone according to timescales.
Joy to the world!
And today we have a script by Pete McTighe, whose last 2 episodes in the show were Kablam, which I don't think I've seen since it aired, and the only big positive was an appearance by Claudia Jessie.
How does a lady come to be with child? Eloise, what a question. I thought one needed to be married.
Whatever are you talking about?
Apparently it's not even a requirement.
Eloise, that is more than enough.
I take it the two of you? No?
Do not look at me.
Have you ever visited a farm?
And Praxius, which I had mixed feelings on. But Pete seems like a nice bloke, so I'm very happy that this episode is getting good ratings. And before we get into the episode, I do have to bring up the fact that this is a Dr. Light story in an 8-episode season. And while I like the episode a lot, it's bloody frustrating. So, Lucky Day starts with a nice cold open on New Year's 07, where Belinda and 15 take another Vindicator reading and run into small abused child Conrad. The Doctor making an impression by giving him a supposedly lucky 50p, before he gets smacked by his mother, and I like that 15 tried to be nice and make a good impression, even if he doesn't realise it's the same Conrad that he has a vehement disgust for. And the credits roll on the reveal that in the future he runs an expose podcast, and has managed to rope Ruby into it. It's nice seeing Ruby again, her getting her credit spot right along with Ncuti and Vrada, which is a great detail, and I feel like Ruby's story here is actually a little more interesting than her series arc last season, where here she deals with the trauma of the wonderful and horrifying times with the Doctor, and adding a manipulative boyfriend into the mix does not help. I feel like I learnt a lot more about how she feels and who she is now than before. We pick up mid-series 14 as Conrad sees the Doctor and Ruby landed in the hallway from the empty child to shoo away the Shriek back to its home dimension. Conrad takes a creepy photo of Ruby and is tagged by the Shriek as its future prey. And while the effect of it swishing past the camera is a bit cheap, I love the way the Shriek is shot and given movement. This episode's direction in general is really good. Shots used to emphasize creep factor or what we think is Conrad's perspective, or to show awkwardness in the characters. It just feels like they had ideas behind it, not throwing in Dutch angles to look nice like Thor did. Conrad posted the photo and eventually gets Ruby's attention, so she appears, confirming aliens are real and making some other vague references to her time with the Doctor. A couple of shots showing day-to-day people listening, setting up a betrayal later really well. Conrad comes off as really haha awkward, but lovable, and boy, in the first half of the episode they really drill into it. So much, I was almost sick of him. Like a worse Mickey pining over how the Doctor is so much better than him. But the mid-episode twist not only has merit on its own, but going so hard into this characterization in the first half is really endearing and makes the twist more engaging. They date and we get a really interesting moment where Ruby tells Conrad about the Shriek and the atmosphere changes, making you think that maybe this episode will add more from Conrad's perspective, gaslighting you into thinking this is going to be another Love and Monsters, which, I don't know, the episode does have a lot of parallels with, especially with the whole
You betrayed my friend.
You upset my mum.
Great big absorbing creature from outer space, and You're having a go at me.
No one upsets my mum.
We get some more Carla and Cherry scenes. Cherry being a queen as always.
Conrad Clark. I wonder if you're on the Instagram.
Brian is nice.
Conrad and Ruby get closer, and Louise makes another appearance, which, while not amazing, does well to flesh out the state of the family unit. And I noticed as they get off the bus to meet Conrad's friends, the camera focuses out on the background, literally focusing on the main couple, which is another nice perspective thing to do just slightly, to represent how Ruby is now distracting herself from her past and trauma with this new relationship, something that someone reprehensible is eager to take advantage of. And this scene and the last showing subtly and then not so subtly that the Shriek is still after Conrad, him not having taken the antidote she gave him. They have a night out, and with more evidence of things going wonky, Ruby checks in with Kate as she and Ibrahim eye-fuck each other, and Kate drops a hint towards the war between the land and the sea. Kate can't see anything as the Shriek has been locked away, and they talk about how the close encounters of the monster and god kind could be affecting Ruby. These small emotional moments being pretty nice. Kate checks on the Shriek, which is nice to have and atmospheric, although why she has to enter a code just to see if the prisoner is there is a bit much. Opening the door? Sure, slap a code on there, but checking if a prisoner is still present? Ruby opens herself up to Conrad, but the Shrieks appear. So Unit comes in and Ruby tentatively attempts to fight the Shriek off. And as soon as the Shriek stood up, I knew something was wrong. These are actors. And if you watch the Unleashed for this episode, the costumes for the fake Shriek were really interestingly made. It's nice to see so much effort go into the minor design details, as these are meant to be in-universe and in reality, impressions of the Shriek, not perfect copies. So Conrad reveals himself to be a massive piece of shit, and to have been manipulating and lying this whole time. So let's talk about his character for a bit. I would have liked him to be introduced, say, in a small scene in Joy to the World with Ruby at Christmas maybe, just to sow the seed and make it all the more crushing when this betrayal happens. And his motivation, while a little all over the place, isn't really supposed to be so singular. Does he believe in aliens? Yeah, but he puts on this hateful and dismissive front to rally his hateful followers of Think Tank, which might be a reference to Robot, to join him in the hatred of Kate and his lashing out at the world that's made him like this. See the abusive mother. But we don't even know if that mother is abusive by the end of it, as he's been shown to be an unreliable narrator. Maybe everything since he left the doctor in that first clip was a lie he was telling to Ruby on the podcast. I would have liked if they leaned into that either by giving more definition to what was fake and what was real, what he actually believed in and what he was propagating to weaponize his followers, or to go full in on the mystery and show us more from him and have us try and figure out which memory is real and fake, like people watching The Thing and going through to see whose eyes were lit up by the camera. And by this point, you really know Conrad's evil, because he goes as far as to single out Shirley, who is great to see again, but still confuses me with Hebe's existence. Maybe this is an Adiola situation. Conrad exposes Unit as a waste of government funding and full of lies about aliens.
There are no Shriek, no Cybermen, no Sycorax,
and there is no Queen of England.
Using conspiracy nuts to push his agenda, but like, how does he explain everyone turning into sand and coming back last year? Costumes and actors? Anyway, Ruby is heartbroken, Kate is furious and arrests them all. A nice step to her rage, overtaking her as we see that happen later. And thanks to public outcry and scrutiny of Unit, they are once again put into a corner, having to release Conrad so that he can do his press tour. Trinity Wells is back, which is cool, but where she was being exploited by the giggle in her last appearance is just as annoying here as then. I guess she's gone full J. Jonah. Well, movie J. Jonah. And Conrad is even interviewed by real presenter Alex Jones, while he acts like the other Alex Jones.
You took a big risk. We can see on the video that our soldiers literally pointing their guns at you.
I don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay. Do you understand that?
Conrad torturing Ruby with every appearance. He doxes every Unit associate, which, I don't know, should probably be illegal, and he takes over legally distinct TikTok with pretty much no real evidence, just word of mouth, and that one time he wasted law enforcement's time by making up an alien threat that in no way discredits alien attacks. His plan has little evidence, but I think that's the point, that the right vitriol spouted over and over again in echo chambers to the right demographic creates situations like this. A needed message, and one touched on much better here than a similar message in The Giggle, which was very on the nose. At one point getting his message across by just having David Tennant yell the message at people. And the end scene is a little bit like that, but we'll talk about why it works better later. Ruby comes to Unit, gets shown just how much Conrad had lied to her, the abusive mother looked after in another country with lots of money. So as I said before, perhaps even everything after he left the Doctor was also an unreliable narrator situation. Unit has been criticised by Geneva, and the sympathiser from before lets Conrad into the building while incapacitating most of Unit's forces. And it's only thanks to the Vlinks they identify this guy as the Leak, with ties to Albion, which is a really nice little detail, referencing 73 yards. But with this and Harriet last season, Unit is really going through it. Is this why Kate hires so many children and gives them guns instead? Conrad live streams his B&E, holding them at gunpoint, and while Ruby has great moments, Kate takes the spotlight to protect Ruby and the Briggs legacy.
You're a lying little boy that can't bear to be called out.
Don't you dare point a gun at her!
So Kate, the badass that she is,
The grown-ups are talking!
Oh, shut up, Conrad. As I was saying, after Kate learns Conrad shot his inside man, she goes full on, against Ibrahim's suggestions, letting the shriek out and letting it loose on Conrad with a great score. Seriously, while the first half of the episode was kinda generic, build-up and a bunch of tropes, this stuff is solid. Kate, Ruby and Shirley, but mostly Kate, being very good here.
It can feel your heartbeat. Smell the blood in your veins.
The shriek plays with Conrad, and it's not until it's almost eating him that his pants wet with piss, the whole pathetic display live streamed, that Ruby takes out the shriek like a badass. But it does get Conrad in the arm as he tries to double back and say it was all special effects. Ibrahim delivers the news that both bad boys will live, and Shirley tells us that things are back on the up for Unit. Kate asking if Ruby's okay, and Ruby deciding she needs to make something of herself properly, pursue something instead of waiting for the Doctor or the world to end. Taking some time to herself, Kate there for her when she's ready.
You've already got 2 months. What do you collect them?
One thing that's a little frustrating is that if she needs support, why isn't she going to the companion support group? Or are we pretending it doesn't exist now? Imagine Ruby filling everyone in on the 15th Doctor defeating the God of Death. And what if instead of Kate, maybe Jo took a supportive role in her life? I don't know. I just feel like more could be done with that, and it's odd that it's not mentioned. And Katie Manning seems to love this season, if you go look at her Twitter, so why shouldn't she be involved? Leaving Ruby and Kate, we come back to Conrad, now properly in prison, only for a pre-Robot Revolution Doctor to land the TARDIS around him and get the big intimidating dress down of the villain he needed. And boy does it oddly work here considering it's a Dr. Light episode. Conrad mentions Belinda explaining who told him her name as mentioned in the Robot Revolution, and he stands his ground.
Taking people's insecurity and fear and making it currency. You are exhausting.
I get that this is once again explaining the message right to the camera, but the performance and wording used makes it impactful and interesting enough to negate the frustration of the trope. Where the Zygon speech is very clearly anti-war but still works, this is very anti-Twitter but still works. And I'm sure certain grifters like Bolstrak are going to have a field day with it. So after that badassness, he drops Conrad back off, and who should appear but Mrs. Flood, ready to let him out of the cell for her evil plan. So much for
You die in a prison cell, boiling in anger and poison, till your heart packs in age 49.
What was the episode called again?
A lucky day.
Oh, that's right. Thank you for reminding me, Mrs. Flood. So that was Lucky Day, and while the first half was meh, I was really engaged by the second half. Ruby was interesting, even if the spotlight is stolen by Kate, who still rocks. Shirley doesn't get much to do, but it's nice to see her. And Conrad, well, while I would have liked a little more setup in previous episodes, the madness of his meek side does well to really emphasize the shift when he goes full villain. And his plan and attacks being so down to earth and normal really helped. He's not a god or an unknowable entity or even an alien. He's a hate-filled influencer with a gun, which adds some real nice freshness to the idea. This was a real upgrade for Pete McTighe, and while it wasn't as good as The Well, and I like it for much different reasons than Lux, that second half is a solid 8 or 8.5, but the rest of the episode, with its positives and negatives, brings it down, so I'll match it with Lux at a 7.5 out of 10, but this is an episode I think I'd rather re-watch than Lux.
Joy to the world!
Let's see as we jump into the episode. Well, actually that's a lie, as beforehand there's a cute little preface to the episode, a story Omo tells in said episode, but What I Did on My Holidays by Omo Esosa was posted on the Doctor Who website as a short prequel about how Omo from the episode first met the Doctor. And while not amazing, it is a nice thing to have, tying into the episode well on multiple fronts. So if you did end up liking the episode, I suggest you give it a read sometime. So as I said, we start the episode with Omo telling a TLDR of this story, with great animation in the screen window, which is consistently good throughout the episode. I love the different styles they show the stories with, and even when it goes all montagey, it still works. But with the artwork specifically, it works really well. We don't get to see the barber's face at the beginning, and the whole telling stories to survive establishes the story and tone pretty well. We even get some nice little moments from the other three, mainly Tunde. The credits roll, and I love how the RTD era has played with the credits so far, this time starting by appearing in the window screen. It's just charming. So back in the TARDIS with 15 and Belinda, she once again makes it clear she needs to get home, and 15 gets an idea, to go to a place with tech to boost the Vindicator, which they never do. Hell, we don't even get to see the tech in the market to my recollection, just fabrics mostly, so that's kind of frustrating. 15 explains why he likes Lagos, Nigeria, it being near Omo's palace, the barber shop, and Belinda questions why he would need to go to a barber, since the TARDIS takes care of his hair, which is a nice touch in detail, not just as a fun fact, but in establishing that Belinda has been here for a while. Belinda manages to get out of him why he's really so attached to the barbershop, and it's because he has friends there, and it's a safe space for him where he feels welcome, which I'm sure the grifters will hate, but is a really nice part of the story, and Ncuti pulls it off well. It's obviously awkward for the Doctor to admit, with him clearly using laughter to cover this fact up, but understandable as he must have experienced differences as being black, something that I think 13's era, the way women are treated in certain times, only touched on like once or twice, both in her first series, and her Doctor's awkwardness was played a lot more unpleasant than here.
We laugh, we tell stories, they
Treat you like one of their own?
yeah.
I'm still quite socially awkward.
15 enjoys himself in the market, but after coming across a goofy sign in a creepy alley with missing posters, he makes it into the shop, immediately spotting the missing Omo, Tunde, Obioma and Rashid, along with the barber and owner, which the Doctor finds strange as it's Omo's name on the door. 15 making it inside makes the TARDIS freak out, and he is given information in little bits. The barber now revealed to be played deliciously by Arion Bakare, whose last Doctor Who performance I remember as fine, but here he really pulls it off as the barber, when being sympathetic, villainous, and hopeful, one of the episode's standouts. It's now Rashid's turn to tell a story as all their hair grows again. Rashid telling a really charming story accompanied by some nice visuals. The way the story incorporates Nigerian-looking art, culture, and the audibly satisfying accents is both charming and engaging.
That is why we say we will come at 1, but won't arrive till 3.
The Doctor admires the window, but it only activates when getting the hair cut by the barber's clippers, something hungry for the stories. And now Abby enters, setting the TARDIS off again, bringing the missing bloke's food and immediately snubbing the Doctor, which is a nice way to get around the whole how do they survive locked in a room thing. The food, not the whole snubbing of the Doctor. So 15 gets as much info as he can from the blokes, Obo having told them he was coming to save them, and each with a well-played sympathetic backstory. Pretty well acted. The barber and Abby need the stories to travel, so 15 offers himself up, but is trapped into it when it starts getting rough. And in a nice sentiment, he shows a story about Belinda, now being like the second of 4 times she mentions her nan in this story, which maybe could have been seeded earlier, as I remember her going on about her parents, but never mentioning a gran before now. And much like with Ncuti's crying, the repetition makes it stand out a lot more like a sore thumb than it should. The story is shown nicely and is really sweet as the woman Belinda saves comes to thank her, showing Belinda works with the bitchiest doctors ever. Thought I was watching Grey's Anatomy for a second.
What are you doing down here? Just sitting here with my penis.
Oh, and hi, Mrs. Flood. Okay, bye, Mrs. Flood. You know, I think this story does the whole an ordinary life, or, the most ordinary thing is actually the most beautiful and impactful. Whereas Empire of Death just kind of made you laugh and snicker at the idea. The story supercharges the engine and drains 15. Omo desperate to get out, trying to swap the Doctor for him and his close friends. And the Barber and Abby hint to their backstories. Belinda finally makes it out of the TARDIS and goes on a really jarring tangent. Seriously, I have no idea what's going on there. And another good performance from 15 as he feels betrayed by Omo, who was ready to serve him up to the Barber in exchange for freedom, instead of just asking the Doctor for help and telling him everything. It's a really nice story and performance.
Not talk to me ever again. I trusted you with both of my hearts, with everything that I am. How could you?
15 is once again not told the danger of opening the door, so he does, just to reveal the shop is on the back of a giant robotic spider, which looks great, using the Disney money well. He manages to close the door before they're all sucked out and killed, and after Belinda sees Poppy from Space Babies for some fucking reason, I don't know, she makes it into the barber shop, no one telling her to leave the door open. After some nice comedy and intimidation from the barber, Abby jabs at the Doctor and Belinda. Now we'll look at Abby's story later, but the episode seems to think it sort of earned a connection between Abby and Belinda, and like they work together nicely, but it just sort of appears. I think if they got more interaction, a little more time together, this sort of connection would have felt a lot more earned and natural. The Barber lets info slip after the Doctor riles him up well, and with some more great art and acting, the Barber claims to be the storyteller gods, such as Saga, Loki, and Anansi, and many more. It's a nice and poetic scene, but the Doctor and Belinda just laugh at him. Since the Doctor has met so many gods, he knows the Barber isn't who he claims, so the Barber tells the truth. He is their storyteller. He is the one that became immortal and started telling the stories of the gods. And in a good and often used concept in media, he explains that the gods are only so powerful when their stories are told to people, when they are known or worshipped. But the episode doesn't really explore this well. Its idea that gods exist and the humans are destined for ruin without stories. But in this universe, it doesn't seem like most gods need humans. For example, Maestro was ready to kill them all. And there is no differentiation here between story gods and those of the Pantheon or the Osirans, so it's all just a bit vague. The Barber wants to kill the gods he helped and was betrayed by, and if he does that, humanity suffers. Because their stories aren't being told. There just isn't enough connective tissue here to justify it, even if it's a nice idea. Alone, the whole stories keeping humanity alive and prosperous makes sense, and the gods only staying alive by the humans recognizing and reading the stories of them also makes sense, but there's just nothing to connect those two ideas here. The Barber shows that he had a hand in setting the cinema from Lux up, probably in his supportive role for the god Lux, and for some reason what looks like the Belinda Chandrian rocket appears. No idea what that's about, but once again his rage and vengeful self is played very well here, and the spider gets closer to the center of the Nexus. Abby lashes out at the Doctor, and he recognizes her as Abina, daughter of Anansi, the one he was supposed to marry, but he ran away, set up in dialogue earlier. And it's revealed that the Doctor to do this was the Fugitive Doctor, which means Jo Martin gets another cameo, which I love, but for God's sakes, give her and Paul McGann their own shows. I loved her Big Finish set, but she definitely deserves more. And another issue that this episode doesn't have the time to explore, how the hell does 15 remember this incarnation, when he isn't meant to have those memories, having not yet opened the Golden Watch as far as we know? Did 14 open it while in rehab? That just feels like a major blunder if it isn't set up for something in the finale or something like that. And if the line at the end of the episode where the Doctor explains that, oh, stories were leaking out, and maybe that's why we saw Poppy, I'm still confused about that. That's just not really a good enough justification. That just seems kind of like a lazy get-out-of-jail-free card. 15 mouths off some more and manages to get into Abby's head. So after the people in the shop go all midnight for a second, she tells another good story about maps hidden in braided hair as she braids the Doctor's hair. So he causes a distraction and him and Belinda use his hair to get to the center of the ship, finding the engine. A strange but interesting design, a heart inside a tree inside a brain, like a turducken. They pass what my dad thought were Black Orchid references, and a face screams for no apparent reason. reason, and after messing with it, the barber pushes them away. But the Doctor channels Hemingway and tells such a short yet powerful story. The Doctor takes over the engine, using his own stories, some lovely callbacks appearing, to power the engine, overloading it to burst, and using 15's theme really well paired with his speech. With some more great acting from the barber in 15, the Doctor pressures the barber to free the people and have him give up on his vengeance. And just like 9 said in his callback clip, everybody lives. Sure, the story has holes, but thanks to the action, acting, and music, this finale really works.
What would your 6-word story be? What would the essence of your life be? I want you to live long enough to write it. Don't let this be how your story ends.
The shop almost explodes, the spider crawling out of the door, somehow and for some reason. I mean, it looks cool, but it was on its back and it explodes on the web, so yeah, I don't know. The characters all get nice little goodbyes, the blokes thanking the Doctor and Abby, Omo and the Doctor reconnecting, and Omo retires to chase the woman of his dreams, gifting the shop to the barber so he can find a purpose, and is offered the name of Omo's father so that he can be what the Doctor thought of a barber, someone to trust. A little messy,
'Cause I'm too messy.
but it's a really nice sentiment. Abby and the barber have an amicable goodbye, and 15 and Belinda leave as he is about to tell her the gist of Omo's story. So that was the story and the engine, and it was also a lot. We had a great setting, great acting, nostalgia and cameos treated well, but there were just so many creative and interesting ideas here that it all felt rushed. There were many ideas that just weren't given enough time to feel fleshed out, so while I like that they're here, there is just so much that feels rushed, like Belinda and Abby's moments. Rashid, Tunde and Obioma all have nice little moments, but they were scarce. Some more time would have made them feel more alive, and the whole danger to humanity thing either needed rewriting or required a fair bit more time to actually justify why humanity is in danger. So with all these ups I love, but the constraints really pushing on the episode, I'll give it a 7 out of 10. I was hoping before seeing it that it would be at least an 8 or a 9, but a solid 7 feels like the best I can give it, and if it gets a novelization, you know I'm a jump on that to get that exploration that I wanted out of it.
Joy to the world!
So the episode starts with a decent cold open, setting the campy tone well, with Sabine and Rylan Clark playing himself. Cryogenically unfrozen for the event, and as the Doctor and Belinda arrive to take their final Vindicator reading, they decide to stay and watch for a while. After the credits, we get a nice behind-the-scenes view setting them up, with a good joke between Rylan and Nina Maxwell, the event's director.
Rylan, give me some ore. No, ore. AWE.
And after a weird clip of Trenzalore for some reason, we see our earliest look at Mrs. Flood watching the Doctor intently as he talks with Belinda, as she reminisces about spending time with her parents watching Eurovision. The Doctor shows off the space station, the ship having its own mavity, and atmosphere, encased in a bubble. And as the Vindicator pops, Mrs. Flood gets really excited, but decides to stay and watch the show anyway. Two side characters are set up well, Mike and Gary, a couple in need of therapy as they fight thanks to Belinda and 15 having stolen their booth. But things go wrong quickly, with the cool looking staff bots getting activated, like clones on Order 66, and taking over the station systems and control room, placing Kid, played by Freddie Fox, in charge. And boy do we need to talk about Kid. Freddie Fox plays him well in this sort of die-hard situation, but the character has remained pretty divisive. He has a good motive, the corporation that sponsors the contest having raided and destroyed his home planet, and his species name tarnished throughout the galaxy as witches and untrustworthy, literally named Hellions. But the story isn't sure whether this should make him sympathetic or not, when he plans to kill 3 trillion innocent people. Yeah, the Doctor will take some questionable action later, and people have been commenting that Kid is just someone hard done by and it's not right, and he should take the corporation down. And yes, the corporation should face justice for what it's done, but so should Kid for attempting 3 trillion murders. Those are not the simple choices of a hurt person whose people have been discriminated and displaced. Those are the actions of a madman. And the story needed to lean a little heavier to get that point across, or lower the stakes and make him properly sympathetic in his actions. Perhaps he only wanted to blow up the arena because the corporation bigwigs were there or something. but it's one of the story's many points that I think needs reworking.
Hi.
Who the hell are you?
Who the hell are you? That's my species and my name is Kid.
Kid has an inside woman, Win, another Hellion that Nina took a chance on hiring, so kind of a bitch move from Win here. And they play the dress rehearsal to the masses, but thanks to the lack of Rylan in it, the Doctor figures out something's up. So he starts tinkering with a great jump. Also, Sabine mentions that the Zygons have a new habitat, and I don't know, it's just kind of nice to know that those guys got their own world after having to seek refuge on Earth for ages. In a well-mixed sequence, a performer I'm pretty sure is played by the same actress as Janice Goblin, Kid pops the Bubbles energy with some cringy humour, sending the Watchers, including the Doctor and the TARDIS, into space. Holy shit, that looks amazing. If there's one thing this episode has no fault in, it's the look, because Jesus, this sequence is fantastic, and it perfectly sells the scope of the song contest, even if it is giving Republic Senate vibes. Nina tells us that the people out there are still revivable, while Belinda meets superstar Cora, played by Miriam Teak Lee, who helps center her as Belinda has a panic attack at the prospect of being stuck God knows where and when without the Doctor. It's nice, but rudely interrupted by fucking Dugadoo from the planet Grimbold. Don't get me wrong, I love Dugadoo, but this kinda felt like the wrong place to put him. Kid reveals he has a Delta Wave.
A Delta Wave!
Which we're told will kill everyone watching, hijacking the station's signal like said before. The Doctor is about to freeze with the rest of them, but a vision of Susan prompts him into action. Although, did he get his momentum from the ice? And he uses a confetti cannon that was set up earlier to get back to the station, fitting the campiness well, as he says.
Camp?
While the couple open the airlock from Space Babies to get him through, and luckily Mike is a nurse like Belinda so he can take care of the Doctor. These two can have their annoying moments, but they are quite charming in most of the episode. Now, we kind of glossed over it, but Carol Ann Ford came back, and I love it. Boy, do I love it. But I do take an issue with how she was used. In the Unleashed episode, Russell tells us her inclusion is meant as a vision 15 conjures up to himself to help himself into action. And using that, we can infer that she appears in his darker moments later as a vision of his conscience. A very similar moment to her with 8 Into the Death.
What are you going to do?
You better come with me.
Why?
To stop me. Curb me, look after me. Don't you want to make sure your bad old grandfather doesn't take the laws of time into his own hands?
But in the episode itself, it's very unclear, especially when she tells him to find her, whether or not Susan is returning in the larger story arc, or if it's just a vision. And to be fair, I've always wanted Carol Ann Ford to come back for a few performances, and then to regenerate and pass the baton on. But just the fact we've got her back is enough for me. It's just how the episode handled it I have an issue with. The Doctor reveals he can save the people out there thanks to his meddling with the tech, so there are no deadly consequences for those people if he can save the day. Just like the Devil's Cord, we get a really strange pronoun drop, and Kid reveals his countdown till boom. And thanks to our side characters, we shed some light on the Hellions' backstory. More of the rumour and suspicion about how evil they are and that they destroyed themselves. The Doctor gets a taste of the Delta Wave when he meddles and reveals that the signal will in fact kill the 3 trillion Watchers. As Gary gets to have his moment, Graham Norton appears as a hologram. This time actually cast and invited onto Doctor Who and not just invading it. And his performance is fun, and he actually mentions Earth, so that's nice to hear. But the fact that 15 can't protect Belinda at the moment is getting to him, giving him more Susan flashbacks. Kid and 15 speak, unable to see Belinda now learning 15 is safe, and the Doctor crashes out.
And you can run and hide and whimper all you like, but I will find you, because you have put ice in my heart, darling. You put it there, so I will cast your body out into the void.
A lot of the lines are nice, but the whole ice in his heart thing would work a lot better with more personal stakes. As far as 15 is aware, Belinda is in suspended animation, but it's the threat to Belinda that's seemingly setting him off with the whole Susan thing. Not the 3 trillion, but he will say it is later, so once again, very confusing. So while his anger, both ways I guess, is justified, the actual dialogue would work far better if he actually thought Belinda, the person closest to him, and that he has a duty of care for, could straight up be dead. Meanwhile, Cora reveals herself to be a Hellion, having had her horns forcefully removed, and revealing the corporation bought and raided their planet solely for a source of honey flavouring. Once again, Kid would be a lot more sympathetic if the sheer amount of innocents were only getting involved in the crossfire of his war against the corporation, but here he is just straight up killing people in their living rooms and targeting them specifically for no good reason. If anything, he should only be targeting the people running the show. Cora's friend, boyfriend, business partner, I'm not sure, is really intent on leaving her now that he knows she's a dirty, evil hellion. And Kid is almost ready to activate the wave before he is distracted by the Doctor and the Doctor's hologram. 15 deactivates the Delta Wave and Kid's gun, claiming he is just someone who is using his tragic backstory as a reason to kill. And yeah, he kind of is. Once again, the script either needed to go all the way sympathetic or all the way evil, and they are really leaning into evil here as the Doctor uses the hologram to torture Kid with electric shocks. Now, many are saying that this is out of character, and I don't agree. While it may have been more in character if, as I said before, the personal stakes were higher, it's not out of character. See The Family of Blood, Solomon the Trader, or going even further back, Seven knowing exactly what action Davros would take, tricking him into nuking his own home planet. There is a history of it here, and it's not like it comes out of nowhere. Susan is begging for him to stop, and it's not until he sees Belinda alive and well that he pulls himself off the edge. Once again, it works well as it is in Ncuti's performance and script, but that doesn't mean there isn't room for improvement. Once again, personal stakes would have made it better. Belinda walking in the room and seeing 15 doing that would work a lot more if he thought that she was possibly dead, not just frozen out there and completely fine. The 3 trillion innocent people are large enough to set the Doctor off, but it certainly would feel a lot more justified as a character motive if it were personal to the characters that are in this story, and not the Time Lords who die and come back and die and come back. Now with the main threat out of the way, we spend a fairly large amount of time just unfreezing everyone from space, and then we get to see the heart of the story, as Cora performs for the revived audience, revealing her true identity and singing a pretty good song with interesting and emotional visuals, applauded with one of those spreading slow clap tropes. And this all works, it's fun and emotional, but the pacing of the episode grinds to a halt. If we went the sympathetic route, this singing could come in at the climax and talk Kid down, as we see it emotionally affects him at the end. But as it is, it just kind of feels like the story dragging its feet, because the main plot is over. It's just a bit messy. But I think the point of Cora revealing the truth about her people, making a change peacefully, is a nice narrative mirror to Kid straight up trying to murder multiple galaxies worth of people. Wynn and the audience congratulate her, and 15 and Belinda make it back into the TARDIS. The Doctor facing no personal consequence in this dynamic with Belinda for more than 10 seconds. And just before they fly away, the Graham Norton hologram tells them, on the day Belinda got stolen away, the planet fucking disintegrated for no good reason. And the TARDIS goes red, ending the episode on the TARDIS doors exploding inward, the cloister bell ringing, the TARDIS going red, eh? Rani red? No, it can't be. No way. I mean, I did a whole video on why the Rani most likely won't be coming back, and that if Mrs. Flood is any Time Lord, with her whole meddling thing and the Wish World and Reality War titles, it's probably going to be the Monk. And I mean, this episode isn't the time to reveal that she's the Rani, because the Doctor isn't there. It wouldn't make sense. It wouldn't be as impactful. And oh, yep, she's the Rani. Fucking hell. Yep, let's talk about that scene. I love the Rani, and although she got some more content after Classic Who, it was not critically acclaimed. So bringing her back here is nice. But I still have issues. The freezing causes Mrs. Flood to bi-generate, her splitting and spawning the Rani, played by Archie Punjabi. And first of all, I'm digging the look. Speaking about Archie first, she sells the role, seriously, in like 2 sentences. I haven't seen her in anything before, but I am pretty hopeful after what I've seen here. But where my main issue comes in is with Mrs. Flood. She is not characterized like the Rani at all, more of a caricature of the camp era of Dimensions in Time, which could work. Hey, they banter well in the last couple of seconds.
I will bring him absolute terror. That's what I said. Shut up.
But Mrs. Flood seems to take a fully subservient role to the Rani, and that just doesn't make sense. I can never see any version of the Rani obeying another. One seeing the other as inferior definitely works, but all this yes ma'am, sorry ma'am comes off really poorly in cringy dialogue, and the dynamic just doesn't work for me or the character. If they wanted the bi-generation, they could have had the Rani working together, and each a different facet, Mrs. Flood the camp, monk-like one, and the Rani being the stern, domineering scientist. And of course, they'd have their issues and maybe they'd turn against one another. As it's portrayed here though, I'm dreading her characterization for the next 2 weeks. Can't wait to see these actors retake the role in Big Finish like 7 years from now though. So that was the Interstellar Song Contest, and although it has a lot that I love, looking with a critical eye, I just can't give it a high ranking. It's certainly the worst we've had in the season. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed watching it every second both times. The performances do well with the material given, but it really comes off as a mangled first draft, or a second draft that someone has gone rifling through, planting their own ideas with no thought as to how it affects the story as a whole. Watching it is enjoyable with the music and dark moments in camp, but when I analyse it from a writing perspective, it pains me how messy I find the motivations, actions, and messaging. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to give the Interstellar Song Contest a 5.5 out of 10. It truly pains me to do so, and I hope a lot of people enjoyed it, but with very simple fixes and stronger justifications for characters' actions, it would have worked far better whichever way they took it.
Joy to the world!
The Rani is back, and so far I'm not disappointed, but that doesn't mean that this week's episode was perfect, and remembering Empire of Death,
But she pointed. She did.
I am a little worried about next week, but hey, we'll worry about that when we get there. Empire of Death is the first Russell finale that I didn't like, but The Legend of Ruby Sunday was still pretty good, so I'm hoping the art of the part 1 isn't lost here. So let's jump into Wish World. So the episode starts with a nice cold open in Bavaria, 1865, and you can tell it's RTD and not Chibnall because the text isn't an obnoxious colour. The Rani appears to a couple, the husband, a 7th son of a 7th son, and the wife giving birth to his, you guessed it, 7th son. So with all the 7s and lucky day, I thought the god of luck was going to crash in here, but she names the child Desiderium, and reveals it has the power to make wishes come true, the baby being the newly born god of wishes. Starting off strong, I like that this Rani gets to be camp as well as domineering and conniving. Sure, the transformations as she deals with the family may be a little much, but she's reveling in her plan's fruition. After that, we jump to the modern day, John and Belinda Smith waking up on the perfect 23rd of May with their little girl Poppy. And I love this whole Stepford thing. Both Vrada and Ncuti add this sort of false happy front that they totally believe in, but is so basic and cookie cutter for a reason. And just to top things off on this mountain of worrying news, Conrad appears on the TV to wish the world a great day.
Happy morning, Conrad!
A very solid start to the episode. Conrad reveals a book he's going to read throughout the episode, and while the staticky edits are a little much sometimes, I love this segmented throughout the episode. And some very nice commentary, that the book looks just like the Harry Potter books. And looking at Conrad's world, I just guess all people who have hands in books like this are hateful pieces of shit. Watch out, asexuals, Conrad's coming after you next. Do you think the Wish World has a black mold problem? Mr. and Mrs. Smith are happy in domestic bliss, getting ready for the big day tomorrow, May the 24th, and cups keep falling off tables. In fact, I love the cup detail and all the set design imagery like this. I think there was a lot of thought put into the objects, layout, and colours to create this world that makes it really come together. Ruby appears at the door, but because this is an Orwellian world, Belinda and John call the cops on her for doubting the system and asking questions. Now, I do kind of feel like this repeating 73 yards. In fact, we'll get to see some flashbacks to that situation later, and both Carla and Cherry having their timelines changed again feels a little redundant. And I'm not sure why Ruby of all people was spared this reality shift. I do like her here, and her going through this experience, but I just feel the reason she's singled out needed to be more explored. And both her and the character she involves herself with are pushed to the sideline a bit. It feels really odd. We get a nice little moment when Ruby retreats, showing Mel as their neighbour, with a bin full of broken cups. Love that imagery. And we get a look at the Rani's world. Bone creatures that look awesome roaming around. Wish they did more, but I think they will next episode, but they do look cool here. John goes to work at UNIT, or now the Unified National Insurance Team, and I like the set redo and the character work, and even including building on the whole Red Scare Dobbins system, that feels really effectively fleshed out.
Was that supposed to... No.
woman, I'm just...
You're a man. How can you find another man beautiful?
We get Susan Triad back, which is nice to see, and the Rani flies to base on her hover scooter, looking quite snazzy. Belinda gets her own moment, her mother and other relative coming around, and she starts to realise things are going wrong. And in a moment of doubt, which is their word for questioning literally anything, she just runs into the forest and screams. Is that just the thing that she does? Or is that how Conrad sees women? Not sure, but if that were part of Conrad's world, I would have loved the visual if the camera panned and we saw like 50 other women all along the same riverbank shouting at the air.
Are you shouting at thin air? Yes.
So we get to see inside the Rani's base, and although I'm not sure why Rassilon Seal is there beyond taunting the Doctor, the whole set looks fabulous. And I love the almost American Horror Story looking clone creatures spread around. The Rani tells Mrs. Flood to get in the kitchen and make Conrad a sandwich. Mrs. Flood obviously pissed, and I love Anita Dobson's acting in this episode. I do wish more was explored between the Ranis, but when Anita wants to be menacing and creepy in this episode, boy does she go for it. Conrad and Mrs. Flood have a nice caring dynamic, him obviously caring for her, and I like this side of him as he constantly tries to keep the world in his perfect image with Desiderium's power. It still fits his character, but shows the more vulnerable side to him, showing a lot better that he is multifaceted, not just a massive bastard. And boy, do I love the music in this episode, from the Rani's theme and Desiderium's as Conrad holds him. The CGI baby making the giggle, terrifying the two of them. The Rani reveals the Vindicator locks into her big clock, which is really cute, and they set a trap on the balcony. The Rani using a sonic syringe, which I love by the way, to set a trap for him, which is great foreshadowing. The Rani reveals they are after the one who is lost, like the one who waits. And as Ruby pokes around, she finds Shirley, another person who sees the world differently as she is disabled. The disabled people and nonconformists and queers not having a place in this perfect society of Conrad's, which is the logical progression of this commentary. I love the cute area Shirley takes Ruby to, a community full of the disabled and queer, and fairies. And great. Another RTD finale that rips off Big Finish. First he rips off Kill the Doctor in the Age of Sutekh, and now the Purity arc. Shirley's actress having been the Sixth Doctor's companion Hebe in that, and being very similar both in literal story and themes. Ruby wants to get to the bottom of it all and targets Conrad, Shirley going along with her to sneak into the Rani's base, along with another wheelchair user that may be named at a point, but I couldn't remember them giving her a name. I probably need to give the episode another watch through, but if she's going to be with Ruby and Shirley, please give her some more personality and make her memorable. At home, John unwinds, and unexplained, I mind you, the TV deviates from Conrad, showing Susan again for a second, and then Rogue returning. Jonathan Groff obviously recording this on a green screen, but he warns John vaguely about tables, and is cut off before an I love you. I like Rogue's inclusion, but just like Susan in this and the last episode, the foundation for the cameo is just not laid well enough. Why is he warning 15? Does he know that warning 15 will cause the Rani's plan to come to fruition? Is he even real, or is Conrad and the Rani fucking with him? Is he Susan? That would be troubling. And then, of course, there's the fact that neither him or Susan make physical appearances, which also kind of cheapens these cameos with how much they're happening. So cleverly, John figures out that all the mugs dropping is because of the wish reality is unstable, cups falling through tables often. But as he figures this out, thanks to Belinda ratting him out, both of them are arrested and taken to Rani HQ. And as I said before, Anita gets some great time as the villain. Ruby and Shelley manage to get their hands on a working tablet from the old world, and trying to work it, they get to learn where Conrad is, but they don't really do anything else. Their planning useless when the world goes to shit later, so this just feels like a bit of floundering to pad the runtime. I think they should have been given more agency and hope they aren't dropped next episode. And considering a character who is constantly just shoved in the background and not given anything to do, Rose Noble appears next episode, I have a worrying feeling that multiple characters are just going to be shoved into the background, forgotten about, not to actually do anything. Oh, it's becoming Empire of Death. The Doctor and Belinda are all tentative with this gate for some reason, and why are the song contest guards here? This whole minute-long sequence infuriates me, but I do like the Doctor's faith in Belinda. So now the Rani uses her wiles and the surroundings to get the Doctor to remember. Clear exposition, but cleverly it is necessary to her plan and is written engagingly, as she wants him to remember, her plan hinging on him knowing everything. So some people have said she's basically just the Master, but there is a key fundamental difference between the two. The Rani is playful like the Master, sure, she revels in her victory and has little to no morals, but it's her interactions with the Doctor as she taunts him that differ. The Master will be focused on the Doctor within his evil plan, and love that the Doctor gets involved, almost like extreme peacocking. Whereas the Rani either will want nothing to do with the Doctor, or like Heron in one of her Big Finish stories, will come up with the plan and only involve the Doctor if she needs to use him. Not to affect him, but to use him as an ingredient, to further her agenda. Whereas the Master is straight up infatuated with the Doctor and enjoys the idea of fucking with him. The interaction specifically above the plan itself. The Rani reveals everything is fake, confirms the gods appearing was the Doctor's fault, probably the salt, and waxes poetically about their past. And we get greatly upscale clips of Kate O'Mara, including from Dimensions in Time, as 15 starts freaking out and remembering. The Rani reveals that the Vindicator is what is allowing her plan to succeed, and with a nice little fourth wall break, she uses the Doctor's mind-shattering, the false reality, to open a gap between realities.
Because this isn't just exposition, Doctor. I need to tell you everything so that your doubt becomes all-consuming.
She shows the city falling in on itself, with CGI that greatly gets across this interesting visual, and a building with the name of the company from The Well being showcased, which is a nice Easter egg. So the Rani reveals that she is looking for the one who is lost in the Underverse, and for a reason that, if judging by the next time trailer will be disclosed next episode, she wants to find Omega. That's right, one of the Time Lord founders among Tecteun and Rassilon. In fact, the one who created the Eye of Harmony, the power that powers TARDISes, trapped in another universe. Revealed with some voice clips from Big Finish, which is crazy. That is officially the first thing taken directly from the audio for the show. You know, apart from RTD recycling their plots. Does that mean characters and companions from the audio will appear? I wish, but probably not. I would kill for a 15 Flippin' Constance episode. The Doctor starts to remember, but it's too late as the cliffhanger is set up. Belinda is seemingly erased from existence, Ruby and Shelley are about to be destroyed in the tears, and the Doctor is sent careening below by the Rani's clever trap from earlier. But does he tease that unlike the rest of the fake marriage, Poppy is actually real? However he means that. And the Rani celebrate as their plan comes to fruition. So that was Wish World, and yeah, it has a few problems. More underexplored or unexplained things just happening. But the acting was really strong. Developing this new world was done impressively quickly with character moments and set dressing. I loved all of the Rani's dialogue and the music, but once again, I wanted a little more. Much like The Legend of Ruby Sunday, this is a great part 1 to set up the finale, but I just hope the finale will deliver better than Empire of Death, so I'm gonna match Wish World with the previous part 1 of the finale at a 7.5 out of 10, and hope to the Pantheon we stick the landing next week.
Joy to the world!
We of course start where we left off, Anita saving 15's ass with the Time Hotel's doors, pissing the Ranis off, but when the clock hits, everyone else is put back into May the 23rd. And of course, with the lovely Anita's return, we get flashbacks. Once again, yeah, occasionally, like last episode, they're a bit much, but honestly, any negativity from them is negligible. Anita uses the doors to show 15 the world is back to May the 23rd. As said later, the Rani repeatedly setting the day to spread the fabric of reality thinner and thinner. We get to see what Anita's been doing, or rather, who, after she finally got over the Doctor, with some, sure, fan-wanky but cute callbacks, and they get back into the Smiths' house. No, not those Smiths. 15 gets a little pissed when Anita calls out Poppy's sudden existence, and I like the whole emotional focus on Poppy in this episode. Sure, it could have been executed better, but for 15, the so-called emotional Doctor as many call him, the heart of his regeneration story, sure, still having the bombastic world-ending stakes, is at its heart about saving one life at the cost of his own. A decision many Doctors would struggle to make. 10 did it after a lot of moping, but I almost can't picture 7 giving his life for a baby. He'd probably weigh the odds and decides a not real baby is on the whole worth less than the other lives he could save. On that topic, by the way, Missy Part 2 review coming soon. The Doctor goes to grab Poppy and Belinda, symbolically freeing himself from the Wish World's constraints by changing outfits when dropping his jacket, which is some decent visual symbolism. Coming into the hotel, Belinda knows who she is again, and both of them are kinda still figuring out the fact that Poppy is real and very much their child. 15's next stop is Unit, initially freaking them all out until there is enough of a connection between the current day and the real world, waking them all up.
I'm wearing a suit.
I'm wearing tweed. I'm wearing nylon.
And also releasing the Vlinks, and Rose Noble appearing, freeing two characters that most people in the fandom don't care about. So I like the Vlinks, he's just a little guy trying to do his job, but Rose is an actual attempted to be fleshed out character, so I'm a little more critical. This is another story where Rose, played by Yasmin Finney, doesn't do shit. I like the commentary of her not being in Conrad's world, but apart from 80% of her performance in The Star Beast and in The Giggle, she dresses like a flasher and taps an iPad, because of course Kate gave a teen/young adult access to heavy artillery in Empire of Death, and here she gives Ruby a jab. That's it.
That's it.
I was begging for her to have some role in this story, but was ultimately disappointed. On the flip side, Anita is essential to the plan and gets some cute one-liners.
I'm in the hotel industry.
Unit are confused and 15 explains the bone beasts, making them interesting, because I was worried they didn't get explained last episode. 15 also shows everyone Poppy, Kate internally hoping to recruit yet another child. Kate wants to wake up our nearby personnel, kinda scary, she's had all her people chipped like she wants to blow off their heads or something if they go rogue. But that wakes up Shirley and her superpowered wheelchair, Mel on her scooter, and Ruby, who is being torn into by Carla again. Jesus, the universe is hell-bent on making this woman the worst mother ever. The Rani presses Conrad into telling her where 15 is, the creepy and flirty angle hitting pretty well. So the Rani appears in the middle of Unit to confront 15 properly, while Susan goes to build a zero room for the baby. Just to be extra, Mel rides her scooter into the middle of the main room, and 15 gives them the rundown of the situation. Mel giving the Rani exposition, summing her up well, even if Bonnie is putting a little too much cheese in there. Ruby asks why Poppy looks like Captain Poppy, and we get the explanation that she is an amalgam of 15 and Belinda, memory, DNA, and wish-wise.
I'm genuinely sorry, but she's not real. She's made of hopes and dreams and wishes.
That is every child.
Which is basically the same kind of cop-out as Russell's genetic spatial multiplicity. The Rani, of course, comes down and offers 15 a place by her side, wanting to make a new race of Time Lords in her image. And since they were apparently left barren, not by the reasons in the extended universe, but by a genetic explosion, which I guess could only be the Master's death particle, but this is probably my main issue with this story. Russell doesn't seem to understand what happened in the Timeless Children, as the Master slaughtered the Time Lords and used their corpses for the Cybermasters. And then Koshamus used the Death Particle, which is said to destroy all living things, now retconning that to mean leaving life unable to procreate. And that on its own is an interesting idea. But first of all, why would the Rani have been on Gallifrey at the end of the universe? And if she was there for the initial attack, she would just be dead, not barren, as the rest of the Time Lords were killed, not infertile. And the Doctor gets in a TARDIS and escapes the Death Particle. So why would the Doctor have even been affected? So why Russell went through all these hoops instead of introducing Looms and Pythia into the main continuity is beyond me, but at least we got a couple of good reactions.
I think she's asking us to mate.
It would be fine enough for new viewers, but as someone who likes aspects of 13's era, kinda pisses me off, and it's a major point off this episode. We get the cool Mrs. Flood reveal and the explanation of bi-generation, it being a reaction to the Death Particle, a desperate bid for the Time Lord body to try and procreate. And okay, I would have rather the Rani just regenerate and never think about the logistical hoops of bi-generation, but I guess it works well enough. It's just sad that the whole idea this explanation is built upon just doesn't work. They explain that Omega was exiled to the Underverse. When this happened, I don't know, probably in the Time War, considering that's not what happened in the Three Doctors or Arc of Infinity. That could have used a bit more definition, but the Rani six the Bone Beast on the tower, Unit turning it into a massive turret to fight them. And okay, this is awesome, I love it. 15 puts Belinda and Poppy into the Zero Room, and this is probably the best time to talk about the fumbling of Belinda, and while a little annoying, it's not as bad as some would make it out to be. Belinda started off well in her first 3 stories, needing to get home, but between then and Wish World was just kinda written as companion. Now in this episode, she is all, I need to look after my baby, and unfortunately, due to the timing, this comes off as validating Conrad's imperfect idea of a family unit. But in reality, what we should have seen more explicitly if the season had more episodes, Belinda's motive being to save her daughter, and her timeline being retconned later to be all about getting back to her daughter, makes sense. We see in Lux and the story and the engine, she is a very caring person. While she should have continued standing up to the Doctor, one of my main issues with the Interstellar Song Contest, having her care about her child above all else is really interesting as a motive, and justifies her strong outburst of wanting to get home. As before, her only motive did seem to be she wanted to go to her home, filled with people that didn't like her, to go to a job that drains her, where she was undervalued. Now she has someone waiting, relying on her, and I think if better timed without all the sexist connotations that could be linked to it, this has far more value in it than most see. The only problem with it is that it came after Wishworld. Because she can be the strong, independent female character people liked, but still have the motive of going back to her child. They don't necessarily cancel each other out. The action starts as Ruby is strapped with Project Indigo, and the Doctor uses some clever duplicity to steal the Rani's Segway and fly into the Bone Palace. Does this scene look perfect? No, but it's hype and immensely fun, and a lot of the time that's what counts. Additionally, it's nice to see Susan so active, and I don't really like the almost comedic silent cut to Belinda and Poppy. That was a little unnecessary. 15 lets the Ranis open their hole to the Underverse, and Omega comes through, and while obviously not as good as his other appearances, Omega either needed his own story separate to the Rani, or needed to be a plot device in the Rani's story, and I think this appearance here toes the line just enough. This isn't the tragic fable Omega we know. As 15 puts it, this is a twisted version of Omega, the Underverse having manipulated him and turning him into the legends of the Mad God. Probably having been sprouted from the multiple times he's tried to bust back into the universe, and the design reflects that well. This isn't the character Omega as we knew him, this is the Force Omega, and in that way the story works quite well. Where it doesn't is Omega eating the Rani. Both Ranis are excellent in dialogue and acting this whole season, and while having the main villains defeated halfway through to allow time for the emotional resolutions and goodbye could have worked with a little tweaking, this does feel a bit rushed. I like the whole Rani getting defeated by her own hubris deal, but much like everything else in the story, it just needed more time. We probably should have got another 40-minute episode and then an hour-long finale. Or a 45-minute finale and an hour-long special to wrap everything up. Omega is defeated by 15 using the power of the Vindicator to push him back inside, which looks really cool, but is a little hypocritical of Russell and his whole no-gun thing. Meanwhile, Ruby confronts Conrad, and the confrontation itself is good, but let's talk about Ruby as a whole. While I'm bummed she didn't get to say goodbye to 15, she really shines in this episode. To stop the Wish World, she uses Desiderium's powers, but before that, she takes pity on Conrad, the man that screwed her over, and wishes him to have a better life, where he doesn't become the piece of shit that he was. And that is a testament to Ruby's strength of character. And later, we play to her other arc, having been a foundling, where she keeps reminding everyone over and over about Poppy's existence, because she was that child, metaphorically speaking. Where she barely did anything last episode, here I think this episode doubles down with Lucky Day on furthering Ruby's character really well, even when she isn't the companion. So everyone celebrates, the day is saved and Poppy is still with us, Desiderium is dropped off with the Sundays without any powers, which is really sweet. I'm sure Kate will hire him in 10 years' time. Wow, there are a lot of children in this story and a lot of Kate jokes to make. 15 fixes the loose ends from the robot revolution, and after some cute TARDIS and Poppy scenes, there's some great visual storytelling as Poppy's coat gets smaller and smaller. Basic, but still clever. And eventually they completely forget, and it takes them landing back in unit, Ruby pointing out all the inconsistencies for them to realise there is someone missing. And of course, Susan even mentions she's technically only 1 year old, so that's why Kate hired her. Yeah, okay, I'll shut up with the Kate jokes now. 15 says goodbye to Anita and she name drops the boss, just like the Meep did, mentioning they know 15, so I'm sure that'll be resolved in a future season. After they remind the Doctor about Poppy and his heroic deeds, he realises he needs to put reality right. correcting the inconsistencies left by all the reality manipulation. But the only way to do it is the sheer amount of energy of the last of the Time Lords regenerating. And like I said before, this is the perfect reason to have the so-called emotional Doctor regenerate. And of course, it's clever to have the knife twisted later when he does give up his life for his daughter, and she doesn't even end up being his kid. What 15 is about to do is massively dangerous on a cosmic scale. The reverberation's so powerful it drags 13 into the TARDIS, and holy shit, okay, so Jodie pops in to say hello and goodbye, and yeah, I love this scene. And especially how they take bi-generation off the table. So to be fair, I love every Doctor, but honestly, 13, 14 and 15 are at the end of that list, all for different reasons. I never got a sense of gravitas from 13 that I wanted. 14 is clearly a gimmick, even if he has nice moments, entertaining but doesn't really measure up. And 15 has had so little time before going it feels insulting, having 2 seasons and not even doubling Eccleston's run. But this scene and the rest of the episode are some of my favourite for 15 and 13, and my god, the way 13 looks when he tells her she'll never get to tell Yaz her true feelings, the look on her face, oh my god. 15 does his thing, and with a nice shattering effect he wakes up in Belinda's garden, in a much nicer house, to her and Poppy, and we get the reveal she was now always coming home to her daughter. And the flashbacks here really work, and the way 15 reacts with the baby, it's all very good as he realises the truth.
I can't have children. But if I could, I wish that she was exactly like you.
And has a bit of a bittersweet goodbye. And 15 ends up regenerating, travelling to Joy so as to not be alone, which is a great way to integrate her. And his final words, chef's kiss. This is another heartbreaking regeneration, even though he wasn't in my top Doctors. And the way the TARDIS reacts to him, it's all very well done. But of course, we need to talk about the thorny flower in the room, Rose Tyler herself, Billie Piper as the 16th Doctor. Or at least she seems to be. There seems to be a bit of discourse there. Now, I do get some of the criticism. This is very BBC incestuous fanbait, but people seem to be overlooking that since she left Doctor Who, I haven't heard anything bad about her acting, only a lot of positives. So while in the context of the show, yes, it's a bit annoying, I would like some more fresh blood. She is one of the better choices. But of course, like always, I will stay my proper judgment until her series actually starts. So that was the Series 15 finale, The Reality War. Nowhere near as bad as people are saying, but not the best. 15, Ruby and Belinda are great. Sure, they each have failings, but on the whole, while the pacing and understandings of the past are shaky, the heart of this story and the characters were impeccable and hit me in the feels. And the ending from the 2 Doctors to Billie's return hit me harder with every rewatch. So while I'd like to go higher, I wish I could justify an 8, I'll have to give Series 15 Episode 8, The Reality War by Russell T Davies, a solid 7 out of 10. Could have been better, but it was leagues above Empire of Death. Thank you everybody for watching my review of The Reality War. I seem to be in the very, very small minority of people who actually enjoyed this episode. I mean, I get that there were failings, but people are acting like this episode crawled out of their screen, screwed their mothers, and then went off and robbed a bank. It's not that bad. Please like the video if you liked it, comment down below if you wish, consider subscribing to the channel, and if you do, ring the notification bell so that you're told every single time that I make an upload. Once again, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next review. Bye!
Toast. A little piece of toast, because there's so much to choose from. There's brown bread, white bread, all sorts of wholemeal bread. It comes in funny packages with writing on the side.